Yesterday, Iran's parliament did approve a plan to close the Strait of Hormuz, which would block $1 billion of oil shipments per day. This is Iranian retaliation, but like you said, this would impact China far more than it would the United States. So here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday. Watch this.
Do you expect Iran to move to close the Strait of Hormuz to try to disrupt oil transportation across the world?
Well, I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil. If they do that, it'll be another terrible mistake. It's economic suicide for them if they do it. And we retain options to deal with that.
So does China do that? Do they call Iran and say, do not close the Strait of Hormuz?
They might, or they might say just let Chinese ships through like they've done in the Red Sea with the Houthis. So that is a possibility. But closing off the Straits of Hormuz is actually harder than you might think. It's been tried before, back in the 80s, and the Iranians couldn't pull it off. But that would require more of a commitment by U.S. forces. And we don't seem to have too many allies who are willing to jump in, but maybe we could shame a few into that. So it's easier said than done. But it is a concern. Whether or not China will actually help us or do us any favors, I doubt that. We should give them a choice, really. Do you want to do business with Iran or do you want to do business with us? You do that and China just might act a little differently. Now, China actually buys 90% of Iran's oil. So that's about 20% of Iran's GDP. And that's the real issue here, is the amount of support that China has given to Iran and used Iran really as a cat's paw, as a proxy to attack America's friends in the region, to cause chaos. And that, to the Chinese perspective, that works to their advantage. Now we have to wonder, are we going to cut off Iran's oil exports and force the Chinese to go buy oil elsewhere?
A Fox Business alert, Iran's parliament voting in favor of closing a major shipping route, putting as much as 1/5 of the world's oil supply at risk. It could cost suppliers big time, as Forbes finds that roughly $1 billion worth of oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz daily.
Now, because the question is, if they decide to eventually close the Strait of Hormuz, and it is not for sure yet because the Iranian Security Council has to be the ultimate decider on that, that means that 20% of the world's oil is going to be, well, shut off. This is a problem, though, guys, for China, because 3.3 million barrels a day go to China through the Strait of Hormuz from Iran. And if you listen to Secretary Rubio, who was on with Maria yesterday on Fox News, he says that's not a good plan for Iran.
Israeli defense forces launched a significant military operation against Iran, targeting 6 airports across western, eastern, and central regions, according to the IDF. Remotely piloted aircraft destroying 15 Iranian fighter jets and helicopters, which included F-14, F-5 and AH-1 aircraft, as part of an effort to deepen air superiority in Iranian skies. Now, the strikes also damaged runways, underground bunkers and a refueling plane belonging to the Iranian regime. Now, this is the latest that we're getting. The Israeli Defense Forces have launched a significant military operation against Iran, targeting 6 airports across western, eastern and the central regions. Now, according to the IDF, remotely piloted aircraft destroying 15 Iranian fighter jets and helicopters, which included F-14, F-5 and AH-1 aircraft, as part of an effort to deepen air superiority in the Iranian skies. And in another major development, reports suggest that air raid sirens have been heard in northern Israel along the Lebanon border following the launch of ballistic missiles from Iran. The Israeli military has instructed civilians in these areas to enter bomb shelters and remain in them until further notice. Reiterating for our viewers once again, in the latest reports that have surfaced, they suggest that air raid sirens have been heard in northern Israel along the Lebanon border following the launch of ballistic missiles from Iran. Now, the Israeli military has instructed civilians in these areas to enter bomb shelters and remain there until further notice.